peek from a bird's eye view into the court into which many people do not get to see. This is the court where the sacrifices are actually brought. This is the court where the slaughter happens, and you can see the entrance into the temple. So this is a area that is typically reserved for the priests and also for the court of Israelites just to the side. So people don't get to go up the steps unless you're a priest. But anyway, you get a chance to peek on it. This is a reproduction. Obviously, this is a reconstruction, kind of reimagine what it might have looked like, because unfortunately, we don't have photographs from way back then. All we have is descriptions, and we don't have even stone standing upon stone, right? That's a problem. So we're kind of going by descriptions, by what we know, by the traditions we've been told, by things that have been preserved. So I'll be doing a lot of that. And with that comes a lot of, imprecise things. So just wanted to let you know what this is about. Now, we have been talking about the temple now for a little while, and in previous sessions we've spent some time considering the role of the temple, what role it plays in Jewish spirituality. We've seen the pattern that it provides for our worship and the prayer even today. And we still follow the cues and the prompts that were given to us in the temple service. And its influence continues even when its walls no longer stand, essentially. And that's amazing. So the Jerusalem temple was destroyed in the year 70 CE. So today we can only reconstruct the past. We can imagine what it must have been look like to worship, to stand there when it stood. So I am going to say, let's continue imagining. Let's get our imagination going. The slide, try to peek beyond the veil, try to look beyond the ages past and imagine what it was like back then to worship this way. So this is what the Temple Mount looks like today, by the way. This is actually an aerial shot that was done from an airplane flyby in 1997, okay? So it's fairly recent. When I say recent, 1997. That's when this was shot. So you can see the Temple Plaza there. Now, this is what it might have looked like if you were to imagine the temple all of a sudden, poof, and the second temple reappeared. Same plaza, right? You could see the same footprint. So what would it take to make that happen? A lot would take to make that happen. But it is the same mountain. The real estate is the same. It's still there. And a few transformations would have to take place. So this is a reconstruction based on what we think it looked like, what it was really like. So I'm going to play this little video for you to kind of to fuel your imagination even further. I've taken it slowly, step by step, of what it would look like if this was happening in our day. Just keep watching it. Can be done, right? Right? Just a few strokes. Again, this is a photo, and then an artistic rendition on top of it. You can imagine the place is still there. The mountain is intact, the plaza is intact. Some few inconveniences have to be taken care of, but it's okay. Two big ones that you can think of, but that's okay. I'm not going to worry about that, because whatever things that I worry about, Hashem tends to have his own way of figuring these things out. I'm not going to be able to give him proper guidance in that area anyway.
Could you point out north, east, west,
Sure.
south?
You're looking right now from the east. So the north would be to the right, okay? South would be to the left, and so you're looking from the east, so the east would be that way. East would be where we are, and west would be moving upwards. So that's what we're looking at. This is an eastern side view. This is kind of sort of almost from, if you were to stand between, if you were to fly this plane between the Mount of Olives and Har Hatzufim, where Hadassah is, this is where the shot is taken from.
So it's taken from the Mount of Olives.
Kind of from that side, yeah.
Looking
It's
down.
leaving the Mount of Olives. Mount of Olives is a little bit more this end where I'm standing.
Can you put the original back?
Yeah, the Kotel would be right there in this area, right here. You can see the contours are still very much the same. If I to take you back to where it is, You can see this is where the hotel is right now. You can see right there is the plaza.
When did they build the gold dome structure? That's called the Alexa.
It's so
Oh,
this
the Dome of the Rock.
this was built in 15th century. Yeah, Alexa. This is Alexa. Alexa is a mosque that sits on the very, very corner. Okay. So again, this is the southern wall, and on the southern wall, the corner of the southern wall is Alexa Mosque. So this is an actual place where people pray. This is just a shrine. It's more like a museum. Nobody prays there. It's just a structure. The structure was built in the Middle Ages.
Was it built over the rock that Abraham took Isaac to sacrifice?
Supposedly, we don't get to access that area, so we don't actually get to excavate, and because we don't get to excavate, we don't get to investigate, we can't really answer all your questions, but supposedly that is what it is. But to verify most of these things and to determine these things, we would have to be able to go to the top of the Temple Mount and engage with that rock, essentially. Which, well, again, it's there will be difficult. There are people who went up to the top of the Temple Mount, who went up to the plaza, but to do any kind of excavation or moving rocks or stones, there would be a whole another controversy, which would be on the Jewish side just as much as anywhere else. So anyway, that's just a picture for you here. So here it is. Watch it again, just for fun.
Where is the Kid Run Valley?
Right here. Right, this valley right here is what you see. It just continues on this way. So, let's see. I will show you. This is a little bit clearer what the temple might have looked like. This is the model of the second temple. This is the one that Herod built. I want you to realize that Herod the Great started the construction in the year 19 or 20, okay, BCE. Herod did not get to see the end of it. The temple was completed in the year 68 of Common Era, and it was destroyed in the year 70. So it was, I mean, imagine, it's like a 100-year project that Herod himself did not even get to see through the end. He didn't get to live to see that. But this was a massive expansion of a temple plaza. Retaining walls were built. Walls were built on the outside, towers, all of this, and there was a lot of construction effort went in there, and it was very, very beautifully done. The stones were massive. The fortress of Antonia, you could see there's a military fortress sitting to the side right there. Okay, so this is this is the south, that is the north, this is the east. What I want you to see is I want you to gauge the size of the place. A lot of times people kind of see pictures and they don't really realize what size this is. If you look at the very bottom of the screen, I'm showing you a rectangle, which is a football field. And this is a very good American reference. If you know American football and you know the size of an American football field, then you could see that little rectangular spot right there. And if you see the football field imprinted over the holy place, you could see that the place where the temple building actually stood, that court, is about as long as a football field is. And it's also almost as wide like that. So you could see the court of women is almost quite that size, not quite the size of a football field. And so we're probably talking about 30 football fields, the span of the Temple Mount.
And just to comment on how big the stones are, the biggest stones in the Pyramid of Giza, 300 to 400 ton range. The biggest stones in this thing are 600 plus.
Yeah.
And so the stones in this thing are a much higher difficulty engineering feat to move and get in place to have the retaining walls in the first place, as compared to like the stones of the pyramids.
So the mountain was excavated away, the stones were put in as retaining walls, and then they were filled in to create an actual rising area. So then the plaza could be built on top of that, and then the walls were being extended. So today a lot of those stones are gone. If you want to see those massive stones, you actually have to go underground most of the time. You know, Kotel, they're exposed, but then if you go into the Kotel tunnels, you could see a lot of them.
If you go there in the old city, there's a movie that to recreate shows how it was built. And it shows the methods that were used.
Yeah.
Yeah, they have a very interactive program if you go down to the tunnels, and the
Yeah.
stones are megalithic. I mean, like literally the foundation stones are.
They're massive.
Yeah.
They're massive. So notice something very interesting. There's passageways that emerge into the plaza from underground. There would be a big entry right here through the steps. There would be a triple gate, and people would go in, and they would actually go underground, and then they would emerge in the middle of a complex already. So there are many entryways, multiple gates out there. There's not one way in and not one way out. There's many ways in and many ways out, and different people use different gates for different purposes, actually.
Where did the Solomon's stables fall, or the where
Be
they're
right
at?
here. It would be in this area underneath. Yeah. So those are caverns that again were hollowed out. There were no stables there. No horses were ever there. Solomon did not keep horses there. They call it Solomon's stables, like they call Solomon's pool, Solomon's pool. If you've been to Jerusalem, you've been to Solomon's pool probably. Solomon never didn't build that pool. And people just ascribe names to places and they don't necessarily have to correspond archaeologically. But anyway, so this is a big picture for you. This is more of a small picture to give you an idea of what the actual temple building looks like. Because there's outside is this mountain and this plaza, and then there's the building itself. So this is what we call the temple proper, with its two courtyards. You could see the steps. You could see multiple gates. Again, on the southern side, you can see the three gates. There's the kindling gate, the gate of the firstborn, the water gate. There's another gate on the southern side that leads straight into the court of the women. There's matching gates on the opposite side, on the northern side, and then there's the central gate, the golden gate, which is from the east side, and that just takes you straight in. Multiple gates. This is not just like all kind of open floor plan kind of idea. You have to go through these gates. Even a lot of the gates are actually double, which you don't realize as you enter. The gates open, and within that opening, there's a vestibule. There's a short little hallway, and then there's another set of gates right there. And within the hallway, there's actually stairs to take you into the wall, because now you're inside the wall. So you can go up these walls. People believe that you were able to go up the walls in order to be able to walk, at least the court of the women. That was a walkable area. So here's a little interactive view for you, and hopefully you will be able to follow along and kind of see what it's like. Imagine the journey, just take it in. You are a pilgrim coming from the outside. This is a view sort of from the Mount of Olives. That's kind of where you start. Let's see if we can play this. No sound. We need... It's coming. No. Maybe we need to raise the sound on the remote right here.
Working on it.
Yeah, that's all it is. We should be able to play the sound just through the TV speakers actually. Fun?
Very cool, yeah.
It's fun to just kind of experience this and take it in. So I put the words of Psalm 16 to that to kind of put us in a mood, you know.
Is there an inside view
Is there an inside view? You want to go inside?
of the temple?
I could tell you what's inside, but you know, again, these are just all reconstructions. Very few people got to go inside even in those days.
Really?
Really, yeah. This was not a stroll in and stroll out place. Only the priests would go in, and only the ones to whom the lot fell, and that's it. And of course, the high priest would go into the most holy place only once a year. That's it. One day out of the year. For a short time, he gets to go into that room. So we don't have a lot to go by because honestly, like I said, not a stone standing upon stone. And plus, we don't really have people who still here to tell us a
So
story.
you mentioned it was finished in 68
Yeah.
and torn
Destroyed
down
so.
2 years later.
Yep.
So in Jesus' time, when he went there, where were they performing the sacrifices?
I can show you. I can show you.
So there was it's always been a temple now, even though, because it had been destroyed before, but it was still the central point of
Yeah.
the celebration every year.
Yep. That people came from all over the place. What I want you to realize is that the temple, the whole complex, the temple in Jerusalem in the first century, it's the center of all things. It is the beating heart of Jewish religious life. It would draw worshipers from across the entire Mediterranean world and beyond. People came from all over the world to visit the temple. And for an average Jewish worshiper and a non-Jewish visitor, the journey to the temple was kind of like this exciting adventure and a spiritual experience. For Jews, it was a very carefully planned trip, an orchestrated ritual journey that people planned. And from one century to another, people just followed this tradition. They would come from all over the place. People who lived in Israel, they didn't get to come to the temple all the time. Unless you lived in Jerusalem, you'd have to make travel plans to come, to be there.
Now, do we know if the facade was lacquered with gold like that? or-
We don't know. It's a guess. So the overlay, the gold overlaid with stone. Some sources say that was the case. Others don't mention anything about it. So in this particular reconstruction, the artist decided to put that in.
There was a temple there, a reconstructed temple since the time of Ezra and Nehemiah.
Right, Zerubbabel's temple.
But Herod beautified the temple.
Right.
That was.
So the original,
It's like
the
85. Always
the
like-
original building, like think of it this way. When David decided to build the temple, right? When he said that God is going to have a house, I have a palace, God is living in a tent. Remember that whole conversation? And so God was in a tent in Shiloh, right? And so the idea was to prep the place, have it ready. And so, of course, Solomon is the one who builds it. And that temple was beautiful, not this big. Why? Because of the amount of time that they've spent. This was just one generation with the means that Solomon had. They built a temple. And people did describe it as beautiful. And there was no such, prior to that, this was just a threshing floor. So imagine on this threshing floor comes this temple. Plaza was not quite as big. Remember I told you Herod expanded it. He took the mountaintop, he made it flat. Before the mountaintop was kind of like this. So the space on top of the mountain was much, much smaller, designated for the temple. What he did is says, I want to accommodate thousands of worshipers. So he made the flat area. He basically expanded the temple. He made the mountaintop flat, essentially. And so that's what we're looking at today. That's Herod's essentially engineering to make it like that big. But it wasn't quite that big and that elaborate in the days of Solomon. And of course, Zerubbabel and the rebuilding of the temple, when people came back from the exile, they didn't have any money. They were vassals of Persians, and so they still had to pay a lot of taxes. They were struggling to rebuild the walls of the city. Remember? They were struggling with that. Just repair the walls, just close in the gaps, cover the holes basically. That's what they were struggling with. Forget about building something this beautiful and opulent, full of gold and things like that. That was another step that they had to deal with.
So
Do you know if there's been any studies of, way before this time, that maybe the original temple or whatever, even then, from one end of the territory to Jerusalem, by walking, how many days would it take them to migrate there? And what were the exceptions that maybe you don't have to go for the Passover or whatever?
Sure.
Or could you send just a family representative, or did everybody go, or those?
Well, it's not hard to estimate. If you would like to just pull up your Google Maps right now and click on that spot,
Yeah.
and then click on a place like on the Sea of Galilee, and switch instead of driving to walking, it will tell you how long it would take you to walk there.
Right.
I mean, it'll give you directions step by step.
And you add time because
Right.
the
Yeah.
roads weren't the same.
Yeah, right. So today we have highways and all that stuff. They didn't have that. They were going on foot, of course, and so. But you can estimate
Right,
if
just
you really
imagine
wanted
somebody
to.
coming from some part of Africa,
Oh,
this could
yeah.
take them.
Oh, yeah. It will take a
So
month.
maybe they couldn't go every year. So
Of course not. No.
A lot of them didn't go at all.
A lot of people didn't go at all. So for somebody who's going to make a pilgrimage, people would say, "I can't go, but I will have you go on my behalf, and I want you to take my offering with me." So if you're going, you're taking stuff along that's mine, and I'm going to trust you that you are going to deliver this.
So I guess my question is, if I'm inside the land and I don't go, if I had a representative, was that
Yeah.
permissible?
Good enough. It's a representative. They're acting on your behalf, just like. I mean, think of it this way: it's still worship, right? You still get to contribute. You still get to participate. You don't get to bring sacrifices yourself anyway, because
Right.
the thing is you're going to do is you're going to flag down a Levite, and Levite's going to take your stuff, and then he's going to take it to the priest, and the priest is going to check it and verify that it's all good and clean and kosher and ready to go, and there's no defect, and then you have to wait for the right time when it's your turn, because you're not the only person. There's a whole bunch of other people who showed up there, presumably before you, and then you're competing with a communal offering, so there's a time for private offering that happens, and so you just sit, you're waiting, you're waiting in line.
So why Herod the Great? There were 300 plus years from the Hasmoneans all through the BCE period. Herod comes along. Why does he decide to build this?
Herod is a builder. He's a great, he's a statesman as far as he considered. Remember, Herod is a great, he's one of these men, because in many ways he's like a Roman. His culture is very Roman. Remember, he grows up with Roman guys. He's an elite. And the people that he hangs out with are Romans. And what do Romans do to leave a memory of themselves? What do they do to set up the grandeur? They build stuff. They build massive buildings or archways or baths or something, or Colosseum, whatever. They build things so that they can be remembered by them. And so Herod says, I'm going to build things. So Herod actually didn't just build this temple. You have to realize it. There was a temple built in Samaria. Okay, Sebastia was a pagan temple. Right next to the Samaritan temple was a Roman pagan temple that he built there. Okay, he also built an entire city of Tiberias, and he called it after Emperor Tiberius, Augustus, right? So Herod built Caesarea, this beautiful city port, the administrative center of Israel. That was like the Israeli Washington, D.C., if you want to think about it. Because Jerusalem is Jerusalem. Jerusalem is the spiritual capital. But the Romans all hung out in Caesarea. So he actually built quite a lot. And we have a lot of the remnants of what Herod built. This was only one of his projects. Herod was a great builder, and he taxed people like crazy, and he used slave labor and raised money in a variety of different ways to achieve what he wanted to achieve. And this is one of his achievements. Trust me, he gave to Rome its due before he did this.
It's also worth noting that when the temple was finished, there were riots in the street because some people were unemployed.
Right. Yeah. So
Or not riots, protests.
Yeah, of course. Yeah. It's a big part of the economy as well.
There's also like the weird kind of half-blood lineage of Herod, and the rabbinic tradition kind of leans into, sure he did it for money, for the taxes they could get, but also because he's sort of appeasing the Jewish leadership to kind of like favor him. That's a little bit of the hat tip that you see.
Yeah.
whether it's, for what it's worth.
So the tradition is not always kind to Herod because Herod was by no means a nice guy. We know that. Every tradition we have that comes to us, he wasn't a great person, not a wonderful human being, okay, you'd want to be friends with. But he was wealthy, he was influential, and so what I want you to realize, people say, oh, was Herod really a Jew? As far as I'm concerned, yes, likely he was. Why? Because during the Maccabean revolts, okay, when Maccabees took over Idumea, they took over a part that's today is the country of Jordan. They took that over, and they forcefully converted the Idumeans. They basically told them what Muslims would say hundreds of years later, and then Christians would say that later on too. They'd come into town and said, you're going to be one of us now. Would you like to? Or would you like to die? We can circumcise you, or we can cut off your heads. What would you like? It was kind of very cruel and crude, but that was the way they're going to have a loyalty of the population. So if they convert, if they become Jews, if they start worshiping the God of Israel, then we can count on their loyalty, because in the end, they're going to be with us, and if anybody's going to persecute us, they're going to persecute them because they're with us too. So now you're guilty by association. So please understand, this was a very confusing geopolitics, but back then the Maccabees, they forcefully converted Idumeans, and one of the Idumeans, a very prominent man, was named Antipater. Okay, so that was Herod the Great's ancestor. So Antipater was brought into Maccabean court. He was a mercenary. He was a powerful man with an army. He was brought into the Maccabean court, and then the Maccabees, he grew up there, he was raised there, and then the Maccabees, of course, were the next dynasty that was running things in Jerusalem, and before you know it, Herod is born, and Herod is born into Judaism. He doesn't know any other faith. So yes, he comes from a family of a convert, but the only religion Herod has ever experienced was Judaism in a spiritual sense. And he grew up in Jerusalem too. Now, because he was wealthy and rich and all of that, and because he was part of the governing elite, he was sent to Rome, and he had a wonderful education over at the Yale and Oxford of the day, whatever. He was out there rubbing shoulders with philosophers and important guys in that area. And of course, he learned all of the values of that world as well. And did he experience their religious experience? Yes. But remember where he was raised. He was raised in Jerusalem. So for all the nasty things that he did, and for all the terrible person that he was extremely politically ambitious. Extremely politically ambitious. He had that greatness that he learned from the Romans as far as building goes. But his spirituality, I believe, came from Judaism. And how do I know that? My answer is very simple. Look at his children. Herod's children were just like him. No, they were not as powerful as he was. They were not as ruthless as he was, but they all followed Jewish traditions. They all came to the temple. They all sacrificed. They repented. We have stories of his children praying in sackcloth and ashes, barefoot, in the temple, begging God for forgiveness, fasting and praying, walking in sackcloth. I mean, you are the richest person in the whole entire region of this world. All these people, you can just do anything you want with them. They're yours. Their lives are yours. And you're walking around in sackcloth and ashes. Why would you do that? Unless you actually believe these things. So Herod's children, as wavered as they were when it comes to Judaism of the day, they still exhibited pretty strong tendency towards Judaism. And they constantly fought for their people. They constantly proclaimed their religious adherence to Judaism. And they followed Jewish customs. Yes, they married Romans. Yes, they had illicit relationships and love affairs and all that kind of stuff, But does that not reflect the greater Jewish community today anyway? Come on, what has changed? Nothing has changed. People still do the same things today. Let's not be hypocritical. We expect for people to be perfect and wonderful, and they were just human beings with a lot of money and power. But as far as their religious orientation, I think that was it. So Herod built this amazing place. And the temple was, for most Jews who were living in that time, if you came to the temple, your temple worship became long before you reached the holy city. If you were coming from the outskirts, pilgrims would travel in groups usually for safety and for companionship, and often walking days and weeks to reach the temple. If you were like in Galilee, it would take you days and days to actually make it down. And you know, we're talking like walking from Roswell to, let's say, South Georgia. How long would it take you? Days and days and days, right? If you were walking on foot, just, you know, get on 75 and keep walking or something. You know, and except there's no nice roads like that. So many people would come into the city and they would lodge. They would lodge in the outskirts, in the villages, in Beit Lechem, Beit Anya, various roadside inns. They would stay at many synagogue hostels. Synagogues at that time, most of them had guest houses and dining facilities. We know that from excavating synagogues. Non-Jews, they would travel from distant lands. It would take them a little longer. Sometimes they came by ships and all kinds of things. So they would also find synagogues sponsored and maintained by the diaspora communities. What people don't realize is first century Jerusalem featured a lot of synagogues that were run by the outsiders. They were Jews from Egypt who had their own synagogue in Jerusalem. And if you came from Egypt, that's where you would stay. With your own people, the people that understand you. There were Jews from Greece, there were Jews from Asia Minor, from city like Ephesus that would have their own synagogue there, and if you came from that area, you'd want to stay with the people that you know the best. So some people came from Syria, and others came from North Africa, from Cyrene all the way. So there was a Cyrenian synagogue, we know that, because the plaque and the description says who built it and who it was dedicated by, and all the names, it tells you geographical connections. These people, and these communities would send money to maintain those synagogues. So when they would travel, they would now have a place to stay. Think of it as kind of investing into your timeshare. You got it. Timeshare. Thank you. That's a good explanation. It's just like a timeshare, except it's a synagogue. So it's a little holier than that. But people would come and they would stay, whether they would stay in a synagogue hostel or some little roadside inn or something like that, but that's where they could be. City was big, again, a lot of homes, a lot of places for them to stay. Let's see. As people would come to the city, they would approach the outskirts. People would catch their first glimpse of the temple, and it would be this gleaming golden yellow white limestone, because the whole entire city is built out of that, but the temple is even more so. And it's because it's set on a hill that would just shine and from a distance. And that would be a very majestic view for a lot of people. Remember, the whole entire topography of Jerusalem is valleys and hills and valleys and hills. And when you stand on the hill, what you see is you see the hill in front of you, and there's a valley below that you have to go to. So that's what people would experience as they would come to the temple. Everything was designed really to inspire and to create this sense of reverence, you know, as you gradually transition coming from the outskirts. You transition from the ordinary world into a sacred space where basically heaven and earth meet, because that's what the temple is all about, right? Or on earth as it is in heaven. So the temple complex had many, many gates and entrances. This is just one of the depictions of one of them. They all operated by the authorities, and some entrances and some exits were designated as such. Some were used as entrances, others were used as exits to kind of keep the crowds moving and flowing smoothly. Before one would enter the temple, however, it would be customary to go through the waters of mikveh, a ritual immersion. That symbolized spiritual cleansing, and that basically signaled your preparation to draw near to God. Where would people have a mikveh? Well, nearby there would be synagogues. Rich homes would have their own private mikvah, by the way. That was a normal thing to do, just like you have a bathroom, you know, and a shower or tub or whatever. They had them. They had facilities for that as well. Rich homes did that. Synagogues had a communal one, a lot of times, a big one that people could use. And there were hundreds and hundreds of synagogues in the city of Jerusalem. And there were some public mikveh pools also available right before you enter the temple. Excavations have shown and found all these pools, just so many of them, where they would build a little roof over it so you have some privacy, but basically people would strip down, go into the water, dunk, get submerged. Just imagine, here it is early in the morning. It's about 5 o'clock in the morning. and you're just coming into the outskirts of Jerusalem. And you go in, it's kind of still dark, and you go into this cold water. It's so refreshing, you know. And then you put your clothes on and you go into the temple. Now, before people would enter, a lot of times they would also buy what they need to do. What they need to buy, if they needed to buy produce, they could buy produce, sacrifice animals. There was, people came from all over the world, they brought their foreign money with them. Foreign money could not be used in the temple. You had to convert your foreign money into the temple shekels. So there was a lot of money changers out there that would give you whatever the going rate was for whatever currency you brought. And you would have to use the temple. First, you'd have to change the money. Then you would have to use the money, either to donate it in the temple, or you would buy with that money a sacrifice or an offering that you wanted to bring. So there was conversions of all sorts. Now, some people who were not far away, they would bring their own produce. You could do that. You could bring your own produce. There's nothing wrong with this. If you had first fruits that you wanted to bring from your field, and you could make it in time for them not to go bad, you could do that. Or you could dry your figs, perhaps, and bring your figs dry. And that would be your first fruits offered to the Lord. And that's how the priests ate, by the way. Because priests needed to eat. You know, so you brought the first fruits and you gave it to the temple, and that provided a source of income for the priests because there were thousands of them.
How do
Just-
you keep the pools clean?
How do you keep the pools
Water
clean?
From the
That was my
So-
question.
They had
Water where it keeps
they had a rotating system. There was small channels that ran from one to the other, kind of a very rudimentary filtration system if you want to, but it was very natural. It was not clean like you think of running water clean in your bathtub, okay? It was still natural, and all of it was rainwater, by the way. This was all just water trapped from precipitation that came in. So there's not quite the level of clean that you're used to, but we're living in, you know, Clorox world.
Also has to be, has to be flowing.
It has to be flowing. So what happened, people did is they created a system of channels from connecting one pool to the other, where water would be trapped, drained in, and then cycle through and go around, just like they did in Qumran. It was like a very interesting recycling system of water, but it wasn't like clean water like you and I know.
You could actually go into a moving body of water and it counts as a big place.
Right. A lake or a river would be considered a perfectly acceptable mikveh because it is a natural source of water.
So most of you probably have paid much more attention to the geography, but I just looked up 35 miles from the Mediterranean coast
There you go.
to Jerusalem. So it
So nice little walk, 35 miles.
says, depending on the pace, 11 to 20 days.
Yeah, depending on how fit you are.
So what caused the destruction of the temple in 70? What was the main cause that the Romans destroyed it? And it seems like they would have just destroyed the temple, but they did the walls and everything.
Yeah,
The
so
whole-
the question that you're asked though is very deep. It would take me a long time to answer.
Okay.
Because we're talking about a very complicated history and time, and I couldn't give you a one-liner to answer that. There's multiple causes why the temple was destroyed. I could give you spiritual causes, I can give you political causes, I can give you economic causes, I can give you all sorts of causes for that, and it will satisfy different people on different levels. But it's a multifaceted, just like anything that happens in our history today. It's usually just not one-sided. It's a multifaceted reason why things happen.
Somewhat related, I just don't know where it fits in here. Do you remember, my details are a little shaky, not that long ago, I think it was the Muslim authorities mined thousands of tons of material from the
Yes.
Temple Mount, and they just dumped it?
Yes.
And even like the secular world was pretty angry?
Yeah, we know exactly where they mined it from.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
They mined it from the area that we call the Golden Gate, which is about, at that time it was called the Eastern Gate. It's been sealed up, and there's an area underneath over there, and they were and because the way the gate was built, it was go way up, and they were trying to clear it up because they wanted to make it on the mosque, I guess, or something like that, on that side of it. And so they excavated a ton of dirt, and they loaded it in trucks. They drove it to the ridge of the Kidron Valley, and they just dumped it. And our Israeli archaeologists went crazy and went in there going through all the dirt. Now, you don't preserve archaeological layers when you excavate that way with a bulldozer. But what you do is you find artifacts from 3,000 years ago. You find artifacts, Jewish artifacts, things inscribed in ancient Hebrew from 3,000 years ago that these other people just dug up and dumped it basically into a valley.
So this is quite a few years ago.
Yeah.
I've sifted myself through some of that. Because there's a thing set up now that you can go and you can help sift through, and we found coins, we
Yeah.
found all sorts of pottery and things that needed to be saved, just in the 2 hours that we were there.
Right. Yeah. So right now the biggest archaeological dig in Jerusalem is the City of David dig. So it used to be a parking lot that they bought, and they basically started excavating it. And underneath is what it is. It's an ancient city. It's a city from the time of David, because it's geographically in the area where the palace would have been. And so now it's a museum, but what they do with all the dirt that comes in becomes sifted. Why? Because what you find is you find coins, you find arrowheads from all the shooting and all the fighting, you buy spearheads, sometimes axe heads, you find pieces of armor, you will find earrings, jewelry of all sorts, personal effects of every variety that would have survived, that long essentially. There's a lot of interesting things that would have been found sifting through that dirt. One of the most amazing things they found actually in the valley from that dump that you're talking about is a finial from a high priestly staff that was done. It was a finial shaped in the form of a pomegranate that said "Holy to the Lord" on it in ancient Hebrew script. It was just carved down top of it. So we assume that this was probably like a top part of a staff that somebody would have had, and that some way and somehow it ended up buried underneath, and they excavated it, they found it, and they knew exactly what it was because the inscription tells you it's a holy item, because "Holy to the Lord" would be inscribed on the forehead of a priest. So you knew this is like the calling card of where it came from.
And the reason that the Muslims do not want, the Arabs do not want us going through that is because we always find things that prove that we were
Sure.
there.
Well, there's no
Longer
Arabic.
than they say we were there.
There's going to be no Arabic there. I mean,
Particularly the city of David, it proves the existence of Melch David in the time that we say he was. And so that's why we've only there since 1948 nonsense. It gets disproved by all this.
no, it's a 3,000-year-old civilization of Jews that have been there from the beginning of time, since Canaanites were defeated, basically, and that's so you find artifacts from the Canaanite era and for post-Canaanite era, and that's what you find. And that, of course, nobody wants us to dig, because all it is just shows that there's nothing here that's non-Jewish, basically, because everything that comes out of the earth is inscribed in Hebrew, And what are you going to do with that? It's an inconvenient truth that people don't want to deal with.
What is the chance that, I know when I walked the Western Wall underground, it was, just blew my mind. And I'd heard that some people had tried to go in there and got caught many years ago, but what is the chance the Ark is there behind the Western Wall?
Well, nobody knows where it is. If they knew where it was, they probably would have gotten to it already. Of course, if you watch the movies, if you watch Indiana Jones, they'll tell you exactly where it is, right? There's been a lot of legends, a lot of stories. In fact, I just finished going through a book called the fourth book of Baruch that tells you that God came to Baruch and said, put these vessels, you're about to be taken, the Babylonians are coming, they're going to take you over, put these vessels on the earth, and it says, and the earth swallowed them. It says, when the time comes, the earth will give it back. So such goes the story. So the holy vessels were hidden or metaphorically given to the earth so that the earth can conceal them.
Not the art, but we know now that a lot of the other furnishings of the temple, obviously the ark had already been gone, they're in Rome. They're in the Vatican. They've been shown
From this temple.
From this temple.
Yeah,
yes. They've been shown.
not from the early Solomon's temple. Yeah.
They're in Jews that have been afforded the opportunity to see it by certain popes, and that they've testified.
Maybe one day they'll give the menorah back or something.
They don't think they have that menorah.
Yeah.
It's the one other menorah that they have.
But it's interesting. Well, we'll never know. We never know what these things are. It's a good question, but I wish I had the answer to, but I really don't. Danny?
And just saying, in case people don't realize, there was no ark in
Right.
Solomon's temple.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
It had already been lost.
Yeah. It's already been gone. And again, where these things are, people ask me where they are, and I tell you legends and I tell you stories that they've been passed down to us. Is that these things are where they're supposed to be. Will they be found someday? Perhaps. When we're ready, if we're worthy, who knows? I don't have a problem with that turning up at the right moment, the right time, the right place by the right person. I don't have a problem with that. I'd be very happy to have that back. But it has to be done at the right time, the right moment. But if it showed up at the wrong time, huh?
Yeah, don't bring it back on a cart.
Yeah, don't bring it up.
Or
So-
do if you're the enemy.
So imagine this journey. Yeah, that's what it is. Go ahead.
While we're imagining what it would have been like to go to the temple and like putting positive vibes on it, which is highly important in what would have been accurate then, one of the statements about the coin collectors that we have from like Yeshua's teaching us kind of stuff, we see him like overturning the tables. But there's the most famous non-canonical statement of Jesus is be like the money changers, rejecting much and keeping the good. And so there's actually like lines, parables that Yeshua gave that were recorded by the church fathers that didn't make into the scriptures that actually praise the money changers specifically because they had such a hard job of knowing all the currencies of all the world and then saying, no, that's not real, or no, I can't value that, I'm not going to give you something for it. So
Yeah, they were exchanging money. So was there corruption going on in the temple in the days of Yeshua? Absolutely, there was corruption. There were all kinds of funny business going on there. And the whole money changing business, people will tell you that was going on in the court of the Gentiles. I don't actually believe it was happening there at all. What I believe that it was happening is underground in some of these tunnels, in some of these subterranean passageways that led to the temple. That would be most likely a place where commerce would have taken. But most of the commerce took place right outside of the gates, right here. Why? Because this is where people would have the mikvahs, this is where people would keep the animals, this sort of things, because you keep commerce outside of a worship space. It's needed, it's necessary, it needs to be right next to it, but it doesn't have to be in it. And so if somebody brought that in, even into a passageway, even set it up in a doorway, it set it up in a hallway that led into the temple plaza, that would have been a problem. So you keep it on the outside, you'd be okay. But that's kind of like what it is. So imagine like so today if you go, this is a ramp that led back in the day on top of the plaza right there. You could see people just walking right in. Right underneath all these little shops. So today right here, this is where the hotel would have been. This ramp is positioned very close to where the current ramp is. Not exactly the same spot, but nearby. And if you go today to the excavation of this western wall, you would still see the remnants of the shops that were there. Little stalls, little areas, you could see that they're carved out. They were designed to have like a little mall booths arrangement where people would come and bring their wares and they sell it, because this is where you would get it, and then you go up the ramp and you're in. And that was the proper, appropriate place to have the commerce. But if I decided to move mine right there and start selling right there in that spot, that would have been a problem. If I was trying to change money right there, as you've already entered into the holy place, then this would constitute people turning all this on tables, right? Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what I think probably happened in the gospel stories.
It's like the red string people right around there.
Yeah.
We were there, I can't remember which trip we were there. They let a rabbi walk barefooted up top.
Yeah.
Linda can be better with this, but they let a rabbi walk barefooted around the outside, I guess it was,
Mm-hmm.
and they were followed by the Muslims, screaming at it. So could you talk about that? What is that, and how often do they get to do that?
You want me to get political on you? So the way I look at things, the Temple Mount belongs to Israel. It is a part of Israel. It is a proper Israelite. It was a gift to the people who have a place of prayer on top of the mountain to allow them to come pray there. But somehow it got turned around, and now we have to be allowed to come there too. So it's a big political issue. It has to do with the Israeli government. It has to do with the fact that Israel is a secular state run by a lot of secular people who don't believe the kinds of things that you and I embrace, or actually believe that any of the Bible is true whatsoever. So this is just reality to deal with. Okay, so for me to convince people that this place is holy is big enough of a step, or for me to tell people that this is actually going to happen, or this is how it should happen, it's a whole different matter. So yeah, the territory was given for a custodianship to an outside power, and they get to do all kinds of things in there because it's technically theirs to manage, and Israel is allowing them to do that. Thank you. Yeah, so you see, you guys make me go political on you.
So maybe this is something to shed some light on too, but the barefoot idea, from my understanding, is so that you don't step on the holy
Sure.
place, because they're not, so there's disagreement today as to where the temple would have
Yeah.
been, and the
We
Dome
don't
of the
know.
Rock is under some
We have
people's-
not been allowed to examine that area. Nobody's going to allow for people to go in. Like, the people who are the custodians of the area are not going to allow Jews to go in and determine where was the footprint of the temple, where was the fence, where was the soreg. So you basically, where the court of the Gentiles ends and where the holy place proper begins, because that's important. That's why you go barefoot, because you don't want to transgress into a holy ground, and that's why it should be somebody like who's a priest essentially going in there, because they actually have a right to transgress on that spot. Out of all the people, they actually have a legal right to be there, where an average Israelite, not necessarily. So nobody's going to let us examine this place until it's truly available to be examined.
I kind of picture it like they're going to build a temple, then Mashiach comes and says, no.
Wrong spot. All wrong. That's not how I remember it. Don't worry about it. I'm not worried about little details like that. I don't sweat the small stuff. I'm trying to walk you through the past a little bit, because this temple complex, from what we can tell, it was just absolutely amazing. A series of these increasingly holy courtyards. Each has its own restrictions, its own rules, its own purposes. And an average Jewish worshiper would have entered through one of these gates like that, like the one you're seeing, one of these ramps or passageways, whether they go under the mountain or over. That's what it would be. And they would enter into the outer court, the court of the Gentiles, which was a very vast plaza where the crowds gathered, and small shops and all the booths would have exchanged currency and sold things right outside the walls, up against the walls. You could see them. That's what it would have been like. So there was a wall, a short fence. It's called a soreg, a stone barrier of about 3 cubits high, which is, to give you measurements in ones you would know, is about 4.5 feet. So imagine a stone wall of 4.5 feet tall. And it encircled the temple itself, marking the place where foreigners could go and where they should not go beyond. So there was a famous warning inscription that was posted in Greek and Latin on this wall, which was discovered by archaeologists. It says, no foreigner is to enter within the balustrade and the embankment around the sanctuary. Whoever is caught will have himself to blame for his death, which would follow. So basically, you do not cross or you die. And it was posted in Greek and in Latin, which were the two most read international languages of the world at that time. And so where was this wall? We're not 100% sure. This particular depiction, you could see it right there. You can see how far away it is from the actual complex. There's disagreements of how close it was or how far it was. Unfortunately, we don't get to examine this area close enough to be able to know. When that happens, we will tell you where the wall was, but until then we can't, because we got nothing to work with except just empirical observation, and everything is very different. But that's what it would have been look like. So here's another reconstruction. If you were to visit Jerusalem and you were a foreigner and you were sitting out there, you would have been in the Solomon's colonnade right there. This is that area that you saw, the big long area alongside of the southern wall with raised up high roof. Solomon's colonnade was very, very tall, very big area, and so You would see the fence right there. You can come close and you would know where the barrier ends. It would be right there delineating. But if you can imagine, it's not really that far. You can see the temple right there. This is all built to scale. The warning that was on the fence was about the inner courts, the outsiders that would have full access to the court of the nations, and they could observe the sacrificial service from there. And this barrier, by the way, explains the big issue with Paul when he was accused of bringing Trophimus the Ephesian into the inner courts. You can read that in Acts 21. So this was a big deal. From time to time, I guess people would try to take somebody that they shouldn't take beyond the fence. And that's what Paul was actually accused of doing, which we know he didn't happen, but that's what he got accused of.
This is the area that says that Yeshua was walking in at Hanukkah.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So big, huge, tall construction with columns going really up high. It's a lot of airflow, a lot of circulation in there, and the ceilings are very beautiful. Now, over that area was most likely storages of different supplies. Perhaps some records were kept there. Perhaps whatever the temple administrative needs that would have been used to use that area over the colonnade. But the colonnade itself was very expensive and ornate, and it was all around. Now, what I want you to realize is that as far as the experience of an outsider, a ger, or somebody who's a visitor to Jerusalem, the Torah actually establishes that non-Jewish worship alongside of Israelites in the Torah. It is right there, spelled out very clearly. So I'm giving you a passage from Numbers 15. It says, if a stranger, or ger, is sojourning with you, anyone living permanently among you, if he wishes to offer a food offering, a pleasing aroma to Adonai, as you do, so shall he do. For the assembly there shall be one statute for you and for the stranger who sojourns with you. You and the sojourner shall be alike before Adonai. So in Mishnah, in Shekalim 7:6, it clarifies that the rules that actually did not prohibit Gentiles to bring offerings, but they ensured that they must be of the same standards as the Jewish offerings. So anyone could come to Jerusalem temple and anyone could offer sacrifices and offerings and participate in the act of giving and worshiping God. How far they could go and how far they could follow their offering is a different matter, but they could do that. In fact, nobody was precluded from doing that. It's just the fact that the rules are the same for everyone. This is a holy place. You're going to be respectful. That sacrifice better be perfect, because if it's not for the Lord. You can have it. You can eat it, but not God. It's not going to go in an altar. So King Solomon's dedication prayer is another very explicitly beautiful statement. It anticipated the participation of foreign nations in Israel's worship. This is how the temple was designed, is what I'm trying to tell you. Even before the big, huge plaza that could accommodate thousands and thousands of visitors from the outside, King Solomon said this on the dedication day. He said, also concerning the foreigner, who is not of your people Israel, when he comes from a far country, for your name's sake, when he comes and prays towards this house, here in heaven, in your dwelling place, and do according to all for which the foreigner calls to you, in order that the peoples of the earth may know your name. This is the worship. This is in days of Solomon. Solomon says that he foresaw people coming and worshiping at the Jewish temple who are not Jews. And it's perfectly normal and acceptable, and that's how it was designed to be. So the temple had these concentric courts designated for different groups of people. So I'll give you a couple of examples from history. Philo, he wrote that Caesar Augustus adorned our temple through the costliness of his dedications and ordered that for all time continuous sacrifices of whole burnt offerings should be carried out every day at his own expense as a tribute to the Most High God. Now that's what Philo wrote in Legato ad Gaium when he was trying to convince Caligula not to make himself into a god and force Jews to worship him. He says, listen, Augustus, your predecessor, he had it right. And so he describes that the man did donate a lot of money and financed burnt offerings all the time in Jerusalem temple. He worshipped Most High God in Jerusalem by extension, by basically giving to that goal. So Josephus also confirms the same exact fact that Augustus and his family regularly sent offerings to Jerusalem And again, Serapion, he cites that same exact fact. So this is well known to ancient people that this happened. Queen Helena of Adiabene, I don't know if you've heard of her or not. She's a very famous convert. She's a convert to Judaism. She also brought lavish offerings, but even before her conversion, when she was just a God-fearer, she could offer these very costly sacrifices. Now, of course, she was a queen. She had a lot of money. And by the way, she was buried in Kidron Valley. Because when she became a convert, she was buried in the Valley of the Kings, and honor was given to her because how much money she gave to that place, basically. That's what it comes down to. So there were examples, historical examples of non-Jews who were participating in worship in a very powerful way. So for non-Jewish worshiper, basically, this experience represented the recognition that God of Israel was indeed the universal creator. As the Mishnah states, Adam was created alone to proclaim the greatness of the Holy One, blessed be He, for a person stamps many coins with one die, and they're all alike. But the King of Kings, the Holy One, blessed be He, stamped every person with a die of the first person, and not one of them is alike another. In a sense, we're all human beings, we're all different. God is the maker of us all. So why wouldn't He be worshipped in a place like that? Every human being that is created is a descendant from Adam. And if Adam worshipped as God, then why can't all of his children continue to worship? Because they carry His image within them. And that is the value of Judaism. And when I read to you from Mishnah, from Sanhedrin, this is the value of the rabbis that they've passed down to us from 2nd century of the Common Era and on. Every human being deserves this. It just had to be administered in a certain way in Jerusalem. And maybe one day it will be administered again. And people from every corner of the world would once again be allowed to worship. Right now, not so much. Right. The purpose of Israel is to bring light to the nations, and that's what this was about. This is an extension. What I want you to realize, a temple is an extension of one of the purposes of existence of Jewish people as a people, and that is to be a priestly nation to the world, to carry that light about one God. That's why it is called a house of prayer for all nations. That's why. That was the vision. So there you go. It's a magnificent place. So if you look at this picture right here, you could see how close the barrier is right there. See this little wall right there? So people could stand literally right outside, right? Say that you go to the south gates right there, and you stand, and that gate is open. And guess what's on the other side of the gate? The stone altar upon which the priests would ascend and offer the sacrifice. You could see it straight to those south gates right there. Those double gates, those triple gates right there. The gate of the firstborn would be right there. Or in the north, you could stand in that same temple plaza on the north side. And if that gate is open, what are you going to see? You're going to see the slaughter right there. You can look. People just had to sort of say nowhere to stop. And of course, the concentric courts, most Israelites would go into this court right here, and they would worship in this area. And then men would get to go right here to this spot. This is number 4. But everything else was reserved for the priests. Yeah, everything else was reserved for the priests. So multiple gates, multiple ways to observe worship, multiple ways to participate. Every angle, sort of say, gives you that experience of being able to bring a sacrifice. And yeah, you may not be able to follow it and watch it exactly, but you could see the open doors. You could see this is where it's happening. This is what you're essentially giving to. And you can see the smoke rising. You can smell the aroma of the incense, because the incense would have been burned by the priests. When they burned the incense, they would open the temple doors. And all of that was in the air all day long. And then late at night, as the doors of the temple were shut, you could still see the fire, you could still see the smoke, because the priests would be burning the fat and the entrails all night long until the morning, when they would clean up the ashes, and the crack of dawn would restart again. Restart the cycle again.
I would think also,
Hashem's Shekinah glory would be coming down and everybody there would be able to feel that. You would think that there would be some sort of energy or something that you can feel with his presence being there.
Well, some of us can still feel it every time we go to Jerusalem. Because some of us can feel it. Some of us can. Some can't. For some, it's just the city. It's where I sell my stuff made in China. all that pottery made in China, in Pakistan, places like that. Jerusalem is a very commercialized city. It's just like all these shops and shops and shops and shops everywhere. It's built for tourists. It's too bad there's no tourism right now, but I want you to realize how massive this place is just by looking at the scale of it. All these columns, all these colonnades, they're there to protect the worshipers from the hot sun. Because in the daytime, it gets really hot. You want to go and hide under that column, basically. You can still be here, but you get to walk off and hide in these areas. And it's all the way, it's circular. It's a full circle. So this can accommodate thousands and thousands of people. On the feasts, this place would get filled up. This place, basically, women would they would be asked to leave, and men would fill up this space, this entire space. And women would go stand on the walls. They would get up to the walls, but the entire court would be filled with men, like during Sukkot and things like that, because there would be so many pilgrims. I mean, literally thousands and thousands and thousands of extra people. So they're like, okay, women go up on the walls, men go in, and so they're squeeze in, make it tight. And so same thing during Passover. There were some modifications that were made for yeah, that's where, hence was the woman's balcony. That's how it was born. Yeah, so it was walls. People did it like that back then. All right, good. I've run long, but I gave you guys a good little taste, a good illustration of how far people could go if they were just visitors to Jerusalem and outsiders. Next time we'll go in a little bit deeper, and I'll explain to you what actually happened in these courts. And if you were the priest, what was your job? If you were a Levite, what did you do? What would the cycle of a daily sacrifice, a day in the life of a priest and a Levite and a worshiper? How about that? We'll try to do that next time.